bringing
We're
Frans
moving
up
on.
now. Yes, and you're on, Hobart, and here comes Frans. And so Hobart will moderate at 1:07. I don't know if, Frans, are you ready? And I'm thinking, Frans, I don't know if there needs to be a word of introduction. We all know Frans this whole weekend. Frans has been a stalwart of the conference.
Well, so that will be the introduction then. Frans, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
And what I would like to do is to tell a story. The story of humanity coming together in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. I was an active participant there as a member of an NGO, but at the same time, I also had an official pass as a journalist because I was producing at that time a monthly show on environmentalism in Queens County in New York City. And one of the activities on the NGO side that I was involved in was a group of people who were really pushing for a Earth Charter, which would integrate ecological and social, less so economic, unfortunately, issues and values. Nations Conference on Energy, Environment and Development, to get rooted in a proper value framework. Now, we worked hard, but it didn't work out. What the outcome was a weak and very weak statement of principles. But at any rate, there was a set of principles rather than nothing. But the reason that I'm telling this story is the outcome. The outcome of this conference was a framework convention. When things are really difficult, like in our times, when we have to find solutions to major global problems, then for nations to agree on a framework convention is already a success. And many of us will know that the official title of the COP or the COP conference is done by the UNFCCC. So that is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Crisis or Climate Change. So that goes back to 1992. The reason that I start this story about this framework convention is because that is what I see has to come out in the proposed 2023 UN Commission on Monetary Reform and Transformation. We will not get everything, of course, but probably we may really push for a framework convention. And we have been talking today so deeply and profoundly about point of views, psychologically, and in very different other ways. And so what I hope to accomplish with my presentation about a new international order as envisioned in the UN, in the United Nations People's Bank, is to get an approach to dealing with the main monetary issues. And so what I want to do now is to bring up my PowerPoint of about a dozen web pages or slides and bring that kind of focus of getting to a agreement on a framework, so that we among ourselves can come to a framework convention. And so that is the major focus. So let me bring up, no, so let me first share the screen and then bring up the PowerPoint. Yeah, that is all the time coming up. I don't think we need that.
And we're not seeing anything yet,
No.
Frans. Take your time.
Oh yeah, of course I have to go to.
There we go. You started your screen sharing.
Oh, did I?
And now, yeah, but now you have to choose your the screen that you want to share.
I'm trying to put to the beginning.
Okay, now we see the PowerPoint, but it's with the thumbnails on the left.
Yeah, so coming up.
And now you stop sharing the screen.
It's loading. And I unloaded most on my computer because to make it go a little bit faster. Okay, now I have the permission. So now let me see, my whole screen is filled with the first slide, but I have,
Yeah.
I still have to share my screen. So I have to go out of there, I suppose, hit escape.
Yeah, minimize it.
Yeah, minimize.
And then get back to the Zoom.
Hey, Frans, also, I sent you a request to get access to your desktop. If you accept that, I would be able to help you set up the presentation.
Okay, now we got the. Now you're sharing, but we don't see the slides yet.
No, It's going to slow, the computer is really slow. And therefore these things come up and they ought not to come up. To make changes to your device. No. Ay, ay, ay. So now we are again.
Okay, it's up now, indeed.
Yeah, but
You could make the thumbnails smaller by sliding it over maybe and just working with this. I think we would be fine with this.
okay.
Yeah, let it load. Click slideshow and then we should be good.
No, I think what Steve is saying probably. Yeah, now it's loading, so you better not touch it then. Okay, there we are. Do you see the? Is it
Yes,
on?
we do, Franz. Yes,
Oh.
we do.
Very good.
Yes, you're in the right position to start.
Very good.
All right.
When you see the IIMT and all the slides, that stands for the International Institute for Monetary Transformation, which is basically a collective of social sign in the monetary system. And most of them were around New York City, because that is where I was for 40 years. And the last 20 years, I got involved in the monetary issue. So our how can I remove this the black thing to the side?
The only thing we see, Franz, are the slides. So everything's good for us as long as you can see
Yeah.
what you need to read.
Yeah, you have mute, stop, video, etc. I would like to put that on the left.
Yeah, we just see slide number 3.
do I
That's
do
it.
this?
Yes,
that-
don't worry, friends. That is a standard thing that appears on all Zoom.
And
No,
now
you
you're
see,
back to slide 2.
Yeah, we are still in 2 because that's called overview. But I didn't see overview because it was covered over. Okay, what is the overview? There are 3 questions that I want to deal with in this doesn't number of slides. The first is, what is the UN People's Bank? Why is it necessary to have a UN People's Bank? And how is the UN People's Bank to become a reality by 2025? So that are the 3 main questions. And then the 4th question is, what role have the AMI and the international and IMMR to play in this? Then only me, but we all have to make a decision whether we want to go into breakout groups or whether we want to read and discuss what Huber thinks about TRIMS and the UN People's Bank. By the way, TRIMS, as you will get to know in a minute, stands for the Tierra Transformed International Monetary System. And so we, at the time when I finished with the role of AMI, etc., then a vote can be taken by by the audience or by Steve or Govert, whether we want to go to breakout groups or whether we want to hear and see what Joseph Huber has to say. And I think that is important because he has taken the trouble of really studying my book, the 2012 book, and also one of the outlines I sent him. He has not seen the new website that I built at the end in the last 2 weeks in August. So, but his observations, I think, are so important. And so what I did in his letter, I simply put in italics my answers or observations to his points. So that is what we are going to do. So let us start with the first one.
But Frans, we've been pushed by some audience people that we really need. We haven't had breakout rooms today. So if you could give an overview and then share, get your points across for the People's Bank. And then maybe you can summarize Huber's points, but we would like to have even a short breakout room before, and then we'd like to have more questions for you.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Okay. What is the US People's Bank? There are 3 slides to that one. The UN People's Bank is the central component of the Tierra Monetary Sustainability Framework of international development that is based on the decarbonization, optimal solarization, money standard. So let me explain a little bit very shortly. So it is a sustainability framework of international development. So when we talk international, we really also ought to start thinking international development and not only monetary. And so I consider the framework that I'm presenting, the TRIMS framework, is a sustainability framework of international development. And I hope that our discussions may lead to some kind of framework, convention, that we agreed upon framework. Okay, the World Central Bank, or we can also call it the Global Monetary Authority, issues, circulates, modifies, etc., the digital currency of the Tierra as part of its sovereign monetary authority delegated by the central banks of its members. So we know what is on the national level. This is brought up to the international level, and basically much of what Omarova did for the US ledger, the updated international level, I made a couple of changes because that was needed. Okay, also what the banks does, and everybody talks about payment systems, the bank would operate a dual balance of payment system that accounts for both financial and ecological credits and deficits. I consider it an updated 1944 International Clearing Union proposed by Keynes. His bank core is replaced by the digital Tierra currency as part of the IMTS Bretton Woods III or its TRIM sustainability framework. So when I say Bretton Woods III is the transformational interpretation of Bretton Woods II, or the reformist approach by the IMF and also by the UN FCCC. And so there you have two different stories. And the real story of Bretton Woods too is one of neoliberalism, whilst Bretton Woods is the one that we have been talking about this whole morning. And so that has been really very much enriching, and I'm going to, in my next write-up, really use that material. Also, Omaroma has a national investment bank. The Urals People Bank has its own instrumentalities, financial, fiscal, and trade instrumentalities. And I used the word monetary, the subsystem of the world economy. I consider that system like Joseph Huber does in his sovereign money philosophy as primus inter pares. The monetary system is first among equals of the other subsystems of the world economy. Another important part of this UN People's Bank is the bank. 24 governors are chosen by its members, central bank officers. Unlike the IMF, the bank does not have a quota system, voting based on members' capital contribution. This representation is one aspect of the TRIMS monetary principle. And here, I would like to go back. No, I will leave that for another occasion. The People's Bank, slide 3, is an outcome of the Global 32 initiative, public discussion and decision process that proceeds from monetary, financial, fiscal, and commercial reformist measures to the goal of international transformation policies, constituting a new monetary paradigm to advance a just and sustainable global governance system. And as some of you will remember, that was the topic of my last year's presentation about the new monetary paradigm. But I would like to emphasize here exactly what we have been talking about and what Bruce did so well, and also Bruce Wall too, about the importance of democracy. Is democracy, political democracy in action. Anybody can participate and is asked to participate to come up with 3 reformist measures in the 4 subsystems, which is of course, and so they have to. They put this. They discuss this, and they have to come to a decision that each of the subsystems will have one. Will have 3 measures being counted, not 25, but only 3 for each one. And this will also deal with the international transformational policies, which of course quite different thing to do, but that is exactly what democratic decision making is about: listening and thinking, reflecting, and coming up and making a decision. So I think this Global 23 initiative is the whole process part of the TRIMS framework convention. Okay, I can't see the title, but I suppose
Rationale for the UN People's Bank 1.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Steve. The looming why should we do this? The looming climate catastrophe and other global crises demand a transformation of the human monetary financial fiscal and commercial subsidies on account of their injustices, unsustainability, and therefore their instability. And of course, we can also, I didn't put that in here, but given this morning's discussion, I think it's also the need for a new story, a counter story to neoliberalist the condition that the world is in, unfortunately. So that is also a real reason that I have not mentioned there, because that is what I was learning this morning. So the third reason then would be decarbonizing the present international monetary system by basing it on a monetary standard of a specific tonnage of CO2 per person, which would transform those four subsystems, because once you change the monitors, and so take the example of inflation. Inflation has to be dealt with not only with the monetary, but also with the other three subsystems. They caused it too. And so they have to be involved in order to get a real solution to the present inflation discussion and drama. Okay, the transformation that is proposed was first in the book of the Tierra solution. And Steve was kindly enough yesterday to show this to Ordonez. No, the Seine, whatever. At any rate, but this book, the updated version of Transforming Money, What, Why, Now, has about a dozen differences based upon the original inspiration of the Tierra solution. Now we are going to a paradigm of transforming money. And all of that is, you can find, go to the internet, simply say transform money, one word, .org. And I may tell you that even in a month's time, without really great outside expertise in terms of capture of search engines, that it's coming up. And so that's good news. Number two, what we did is, yeah, I can't see the top part.
Same title, rationale for the UN
So
People's.
number
Bank.
7. Yeah. No, that
Making UN People's Bank a reality too. UN People's Bank 3.
for heaven's sakes, now these stupid things coming up. This post, attend and Zoom. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that this is happening. Because
When this happens, I think best is to get out of screen share and get back into it again, and then choose your
oh, it's coming back.
screen again. Because, well, yeah, now we see you.
Yeah. What's going on in France right now is your connection is weak. Maybe now we're seeing you move a little bit.
Oh, okay, in the meantime, if you want to not to waste your time, here is the web page. But I have to get my PowerPoint, so let me go back to the PowerPoint. What's happening? So what do you see? Okay,
Right now, we
We're-
only see you on screen. I
Exactly.
just sent you
This is-
another request to access your screen and control to help you. If,
okay.
yeah,
We were that was number one of the rationale. We now go to 7. The pros and cons of modeling through, which is basically what happens. It's what is this?
Frans, you're not yet sharing.
Did
can you
you?
do another screen share, please?
Okay.
Yeah, and now choose the screen you want to share. Yes, we're back. We're at page 7 of your.
Yeah. You see
And
page
the-
7.
We see page
Yes.
7, and the top is the title is Rationale for the UN People's Bank 2.
Yeah. So I was saying pros and cons. The easy way out is modeling through. Solution is too difficult. Great uncertainty. Everybody knows. Talk about it. Great uncertainty. Nobody can be definite. And why is that? Because there is no common framework that people can, within which people can really discuss effectively what to do. And that is basically what the rationale is of the TRIPS and also of the UN People's Bank. And then you can say, yeah, but Bretton Woods 2 of the IMF is really also trying to do its best. It's neoliberalism at the top, and so they have to make the decision. I see a role for World Bank and IMF, but a very subsidiary one. Pros and cons of structural international monetary transformation. Sergio Rossi, structural reform without systemic transformation. Now, Sergio may believe this for the future of his particular notion of an international monetary system. I don't. TRIPS framework is an example of structural changes, but also systemic changes. And systemic not only changes, but systemic transformation. So you really are talking, and that is the difficulty. People are so accustomed to reform thinking, so they change the form. But when you talk about transformation, you go beyond the form. And so that makes difficult for people to start thinking about this. And so it's a major challenge. And I mentioned Hubert's view about monetary view of primus inter pares, so that stays there. Okay, so if we talk about inflation as an example, you have a traditional approach, it's modeling through. The reformist approach has its mostly national debt system replaced with a money-based one, and that's a good one. In the TRIPS framework, the money system is the financial system is money-based. And of course, the monetary system is based upon monetary standard, decarbonization standard. The fiscal system is based upon inequality reduction. And the trade system is based upon global regulations or supervision by the US People's Bank. So all of this hangs together within a philosophy and framework that, in my opinion, deserves real attention, especially among us who are trying to change the national and international system. How can we make it a reality? Now, the last COP, I worked with the UN office, and we had put out a letter, open letter, for a monetary standard and a petition for a 2023 UN Commission on Monetary Reform. I don't know exactly what happened to it, but it's there, and maybe together with the other petition of the AMI, it may attract some eyeballs and hopefully some brains. Now, when I talk about the 2023 Commission on Monetary Reform and Transformation, I also call it an associated UN Foundational Convention that would enable the UN to harbor its own global bank with its financial, fiscal, and commercial instrumentalities. So what happened in 1944, there was not only, which was still part, I don't know whether it was considered part of Bretton Woods I. Probably it was, because this foundational convention really was there in order to put the United Nations in its place. And so now I strongly feel that together with this Commission on Monetary Reform and Transformation, that we ought to have in the next year, 2024, a UN Foundational Convention. Because we, nations, people, the global community can't do without the UN. Of course, I know all the limitations of the UN. I've been around the UN for about 30, almost 40 years when I was in New York City, when I worked in New York City. So I know what I'm talking about. So these that are making the TRIMS and its People's Bank a reality is mainly a question of those two, one commission and one convention. And of course, grassroots campaigns using AVAS and other petition signing organizations to make transformational changes possible. Margaret Mead was one of my professors at Columbia. And I really admired her for what she did outside the Columbia. And her statement that the only change that is going to happen, and particularly what we are about with monetary reform and transformation, is by people, by grassroots. Politicians, they have to be pushed. And of course, also Bruce Wall, a couple of minutes ago, he really talked about the whole political nature of what we have to do in order to get national democracies, but also a global community of democracies. And so a fourth reason, no, 4 ways, and the People's Bank, in reality, is the outreach of CSMOs. And so in UN parlance, we talked about civil society organizations, CSOs. I feel we ought to be self-confident enough to say we are CS monetary organizations. And so that is part of our outreach. So, making it reality means simple framing and reframing, retelling, branding of a new monetary, financial, fiscal, and commercial issues that is considered complex using petty statements or signs and placards. And it was music in my ears when I heard both Bruces speak today. Because that is exactly an enormous, momentous challenge, but that doesn't mean that we ought not to start. And so what is really needed, that we have working groups on TRIMS and the US People's Bank that attack financialization and economic concentration by making strong statements to UN organizations and getting invited by financial elites in banking and non-banking sectors. And here, let me tell a little story, a quick one, about press conferences at the 220 COP in Cancun. I was part of a delegation of Marinol Dominican sisters. And they may not exactly have fully understood what my Tierra say, because I was believable to them, the so-called trust that we talked about half an hour ago. And so once you know the rules of those conferences, you use them to your own advantage. So I managed to sign up 2 press conferences, one in the beginning of the week or 10 days, and one in the middle or towards the end. And of course, it is first come, first serve. And so when you are smart enough to do this, so I had 2 press conferences. And I must tell you, there was hardly anybody there. And one of them was almost, what shall I say, ludicrous. I was sandwiched in to 2 major organizations, Action Network and another one. And but they had to stack to that time between them. And so the whole press group left, except for half a dozen or a dozen people. At any rate, what I simply want to the point that I'm making is, we ought not to be bashful to speak up and to get into this. And so one of the recommendations I have for AMI and also for IMMR is that we really have to become serious of getting accredited with the UN, because don't forget, once you get accredited to one, you can go to all the others, and you get also access to all kinds of other international kind of things, because that is where we have to be. And if I hear the 2 Bruces speak this morning, not to the choir, but to the people out there at the UN conferences, and also at those banking elites, because that is where the decisions are being made, as all of us know. Okay, the third reason to get this TRIMS and also the People's Bank going is developing leverage points. And I want to mention 3 initiatives that I'm working on as part of the my 2023 sequel book to the 2012 book. And the first one is the US-China Partnership in Rivalry Treaty, which is International Development Facility Initiative. Everybody knows that what is going to happen in the next 2 decades very much depends upon what US and China are going to do. And what I'm proposing is that the UN People's Bank sets up an international development facility which would fund both the IMF and Western development approaches and the Chinese and East Asian approaches to development in Africa and South America and India. And so that is one initiative which I hope really to first write up in an article and try to get this as a guest essay in the New York Times or anywhere else, as a way to make people think that there are possibilities. And then, of course, I will have to make the whole issue of the TRIMS facility convention that is needed. Then the second one is, those elites, they are not going to listen unless you really push them. And so I, about 3 years ago, I prepared a paper in response to call for papers from the South African development community. And my main point was reparation, but more transformation. And so basically, that was the beginning that I started thinking of a partial debt strike. And so that elites, public, governmental, and also financial private elites are pushed to come to agree, and that they promise for the 2022 and 23 Commission and the 24 Foundational Convention to be serious about that, because I don't see any real hope if nations are not going to talk to one another. And so for me, one of the major activities that the Alliance and the AMI and also the international movement is to organize at least their citizens to have their governments support this partial debt strike for African debt in debt nations. Okay, and the last one that I'm working on is the BINDRA initiative. BINDRA stands for the Dutch words Binnenhof Raadzaal, which is the inner court and the place where the Dutch government parliament meets. And so I'm proposing that the Dutch government basically follows how should I say this? So how that the Dutch government thinks about its illustrious past of being the first republic, the first nation to have a central bank, first nation who had a stock market, and the first nation who had a reserve currency. And And part of what is I'm going to now, since after listening to Edgar's presentation, I'm really diving into this. And I'm going to very probably, I'm not sure completely yet how to do it, but I'm going to include this in my proposal of the BINRE initiative. And so that are 3 initiatives that are part of my sequel book of transforming money, because the 3 of them, there's 3 initiatives, will push nations and businesses and people to the need for a TRIMS sustainability framework convention and particularly a US peace, a US within the UN, that the financial source of money is going to be located. And I think that it was Maynard Keynes' idea that the International Clearing Union and the currency, the Bangkok currency, he might have hoped that this might have been inside the UN. But
Frans, if I may interrupt there. I propose, if you're okay with that, that we're going into breakout rooms.
and that is exactly for what I have 3 questions.
Okay, send us into the breakout rooms with questions.
How important is the establishment of an MMR international working group to acquire accreditation at the UN organizations, or for CSMOs to join existing delegations? You know, you need not to have your own, you can join other. And I was thinking about John's relationship with the League of Women Voters. They will have a delegation. John could be on there when they go to Egypt. Second, should AMI and the Alliance and the international movement define monetary reforms in terms of national reformist measures and international transformational policies? So monetary reform is a kind of dubious, it's a kind of unclear term. So defining reform, and I hope to have made the point that it is not only national definitions, but an international need is needed. And the last one is, what is your group's opinion about the 3 approaches to combat inflation? So you remember the one, the traditional one, the reformist one, the transformational one. Thank you all for your attention. I hope it has been clear enough, and thank you.
Thank you, Frans. All right, if everybody is back, okay. We're back here. Who wants to go first to report out? You might have done 1 question, 2 questions, 3 questions, maybe 4 questions even. If anybody wants to do that, raise your hand. I think I have Stephen as the first one. And okay, we got Frans back here. Stephen, go ahead.
We talked and we stood on young Kim's shoulders to come up with some thoughts and further concerns and questions. And they were the idea of, before starting a people's bank and an international bank, it seems like we need to take a look at who the international players are now. And part of that involves you looking at the international bondholders and looking at different companies. There's a security trust company. There's and other players that are offsetting the counterpart companies, a mutual trade counterpart, and a lot of bonds, be them Korean, but also the huge US market in that is of very big concern. And if we do have monetary reform, we need to unravel ourselves out of our debt system internationally and work towards a new international money in ways. So there has to be some planning maybe around how to unravel our debt systems internationally to move forward with some type of people's bank, perhaps. Just some thinking, and we're that's.
But did you, Stephen, did you address the question of how important it is to establish a IMMR international working group?
All of that, yeah, we just summarized where IMMR is becoming a legal entity, so they could even apply. And they may be finishing that up. They were trying in several countries. And we updated we figured that out fairly quick, but of course we're very, we would naturally be positive that using the UN to make connections is an important thing. And of course, we'd be willing to go through the hoops to do that. That was a lot of my thought, but
Who is the we you are talking about? We meaning your a discussion group, or are you talking on behalf of AMI?
No, it was, I brought it up in the group, and maybe others had a little different thought, but that seemed like a no-brainer. Of course we want to go forward with it.
Okay, I hear you. Anybody else wants to report out of their group on this issue? Otherwise, I will do so. Yeah, I come from the Netherlands, like Dr. Verhagen. A lot is about procedure, a lot about democracy, Robert rules of order, tabling motions, getting them seconded, and then. So what we were thinking about is that. Sure, we can explore that, and the Americans have a representative at the IMMR who is Mark Young, who unfortunately is not present. Otherwise, he could tell us something. But AMI and AFGM could ask him to at least explore that possibility with IMMR. Our concern is that IMMR doesn't have the organizational breadth and manpower to take that on. So our sense was, yes, we are in favor of something in that direction. But you know, it's the procedure also, like, you know, how do we get to that decision, and is it realistic to get to that point? So that was majorly our thing. We didn't get to question 2 nor number 3. But Frans, before you respond, I'd like to see if anybody else just wants to have their own thoughts on this as a comment, or otherwise we'll go back to Frans and we just proceed with our general question and answer. Okay, Janice Richards. So she is into politics in Texas, and she's becoming she wants to be elected there. So she has some insight probably in the political process. Janice, go ahead.
Hi, also, I am a Soviet studies major. My mother was a Soviet refugee. I'm very heavily tied to Russia in my genes and in my knowledge. So I want to make sure that we're talking about Russia and we're not ignoring it just because American propaganda doesn't like it right now. So I just wanted to weigh in on that and see if I could join.
Janice, I have to stop you here. We're in a procedure about discussing a proposal
Right, and I
Um,
wanted to find out, the nature of the group that will be discussing it. I'd like to be a part of that, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it might not be clear to everybody what the IMMR is.
Right.
You have, yeah, you have never heard of the IMMR probably.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that's something that we have to address then here indeed.
Okay.
Uh,
In
Howard,
addition to the Russia stuff.
yeah, no, bring that up later. We're,
great,
we're
great.
gonna
Thank
try
you.
to stay within a time frame. And
Yes.
okay, Lucille has her hand up, and I ask her to come forward. I'll add you to the spotlight. Lucille, go ahead.
So we were talking about the answer to Franz's first question right before you left. We left the breakout rooms. And so I think I think it's relatively important that we do have that sovereign just money reformers have a presence as a not-for-profit unit at the IN level, COP27 level. Franz in the breakout room offered to lead that effort. I think that's great. And so that addresses some of the IMMR labor power, but I do think it shouldn't be Franz doing that off on his own if the organizations have each agreed with him. And I would say it's relatively important that there's a small committee of 1 to 2 people from each organization that are working with him, that he can report to, that can work with them on it, and that report back to the organizations. So that's my answer to that. And I said my answer to his second question is, I think, different than his own answer, but I told them I didn't see his whole presentation. I took a break then and just got back when he was posing the questions. So that's it, all I have to say. Except that I am going to watch his presentation when the recording is posted, I promise.
Okay, fair enough indeed. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll give the word to Frans. Okay, Frans, go ahead.
yeah,
Hello? Okay.
Oh, wait, Joe, did you
Yeah, I
Really?
just
want to
just
weigh
wanted to-
in? Okay, Joe Polito is talking. Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to mention that Rita and I had a good discussion in the breakout, and we both agree that kind of a key component is for us to have a better understanding of what this currency would look like, how it would work. Is it like a euro where countries are giving up their national currency, or is it a secondary currency? Like the comparison to a bank card helps somewhat, but that seems to be the sticking point in totally understanding this excellent series of ideas that Frans has introduced. Thank you.
Frans, go ahead to explain a little bit.
yeah. No, let me first go back to the question of the accreditation. And I think what Lucille is saying is exactly, we'll have 1 or 2 people working with me. I will use my contacts. I will start thinking, I know one guy who has been there for the last 20 years and who is basically the head of all the NGOs. So I'm going to talk to him and say, now look at this. So I will try to see to it that he feels that this is important. And then we simply get all the information and also start politicking about this at the UN level, at the NGO level. And so I will do this not tomorrow, but within the next month, that I can send a little report to the people of the Alliance and AMI and MMR. And I hope that Mark Young is part of the group, because he history of the MMR he has followed it. And so that is fine. So if the group feels that is a good idea, I will start exploring the possibilities of getting the proper information, that what has to happen, etc., etc. Then, as regards number 2, that was also Joe. That was also the question of Joseph Huber. He said, is this Tierra digital currency an add-on like some of the crypto, or is it by itself? And so I made it very clear, this is quite different. It's not an add-on. It is the central denomination of money of the UN People's Bank. And then you can say, yeah, but what about those historical attachment to people's currency? No, that is still possible as a transition, but the value of their new historical currency will be determined by the level of decarbonization as determined by the central bankers, governors of the People's Bank. So so it's important to understand that any People's Bank is part of a system, of a new structure, a transformed structure. And so that is, as I mentioned exactly before the breakout groups, what I will do, I will send a letter, which is a kind of long letter, of Joseph Huber's and my responses. And because I don't think we don't have the time now, because and so that is about the currency. And then there was another. What was the other point that was being raised?
Yeah, I don't think anybody addressed that. I took a picture. What is your group's opinion about the 3 approaches to combat inflation? But I propose to drop that.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time.
And as regards the second one, you see, Lucille made the point, and rightly so, that my transformation of monetary transformation, I applied this basically to the international level, the international policy level. And Lucille was saying, yeah, but also the national money-based monetary system is already transformational too. And that is true. And so, but when I talk about a UN People's Bank and also this whole framework of the TRIMS framework, I really have to define transformation on the international level. And so national policies, like also the NEAT Act and IMRA, they are already an enormous step. But the real goal is to have particularly people, the civil society monetary organizations working together. And so that is why I feel that when I say the UN Commission on Monetary Reform and Transformation, then it really becomes very clear that this transformation is something on the global level. So
yes, I would say here that it might get complicated if you want to get the IMMR involved to accredit someone, because they will have to probably talk with the members of their organization and come up with something of a mandate for the person that they want to have accredited on their account. I'm not totally sure if when the discussions happen, if your proposal specifically comes out in the discussion, unchanged, which is something you probably know and can expect in the political process, that if you want to have, a broad backing from most IMMR members, there might be some calibrating of the mission with which they might send anybody. It might be you, it might be someone else. We have to figure out. I propose that AMI and AFGM might pick that up and bring in Mark Young also, because if the IMMR says, well, we don't have any space and manpower to even think about it, then the buck stops there then actually. So we have to go step by step. I think it's a good idea. And even to have someone there is itself already a big step and newsworthy. But I feel we have to stick to a step-by-step procedure there. If we want to bring in other people, we have to probably compromise one way or another. But Bo Young is one of the people that taught me, take it step by step with others, then you can get pretty far. If you go alone, you can go far, but you might bump against.
I also believe that it is a question of the group, of the three groups. But if the IMMR has a bit difficulty making its selection, then we can say that the Alliance and AMI have taken the initiative to get the process rolling, and then after, let's say, 3 or 4 months, they can see, oh, that is what it includes, and then they can make a decision whether they want to join or not. It is not exactly.
Yeah, but then we have to think about, if we first do IMMR. Or just the Alliance and AMI. And I think if you talk about being accredited to the UN, it would be better to have, the IMMR, of course, involved, because that's about 30 countries that are represented. Plus, they can pool possibly, their resources if anybody feels that it's a good idea. Then you have 30 organizations that might, chip in something, and then it can become a reality. So I would say go first IMMR, and if that doesn't work, then maybe backup plan is with the AMI and AFGM. But we have to go step by step, and well, that's what I have to say about it. I don't know what Stephen wants to pitch in here, because we have to keep going with our program.
AMI and AFGM can help lead whatever, but that'll be a strategy or a conversation for later.